Good afternoon, students. So today we'll continue with the defenses that are available to the to the defendant. Now, in previous classes, we have discussed the concept of voluntary non-fit injuria and the exceptions that are available to this defense that is available to the defendant. Now, we'll be continuing with the aspect of another defense that is there to the defendant. Now, this is plaintiff the wrongdoer. Now, when we talk about the effect of this particular defense, here we say that the effect of this defense will be there only when the plaintiff has done some kind of illegal conduct. So, in this, there is a right to sue under tort. The defendant can put this defense, can take this defense only when the defendant is able to prove that plaintiff had done something wrong, and that wrong that has been done by plaintiff is it's some illegal conduct or some kind of misconduct that has been done, and this is what will entitle the defendant to bring an action against plaintiff. But normally when we talk about this particular defense, practically speaking, this is not very much taken into consideration or taken up by the defendants, because in that case it becomes very difficult for defendants to prove this. So sometimes it creates a perplexed situation also for judges to determine whether actually the plaintiff has committed some wrong or not. And therefore, in many few cases, defendant takes up this argue that plaintiff should be barred from suing him for any wrong or injury which has been caused to him. Okay, so when we talk about plaintiff the wrongdoer, is it has been said that it is that act which is based on the principle that no court will aid a person who is found or whose a cause of action is founded on an immoral or illegal act. Now it says that if I am I'm making I'm filing a case against any other person. I'm putting allegation on any other person for any injury, damages that are caused to me. But if I have committed some immoral or illegal act, then I cannot bring that action against the other party. This is what this it is based on this principle that yes, you can bring an action against plaintiff. You can say that plaintiff was a wrongdoer, and defendant is not entitled to pay compensation, is not under the liability to pay compensation to the plaintiff. But in that case, it is to be proved that there is some immoral or illegal act on the part of plaintiff. So it is based on this maxim ex turpi causa non oritur actio, which means that from an immoral cause, no action arises. Right. So, like for example, here we can take very common examples from our day-to-day life. Like for example, if there is an accident that a car or motorist met with, and let's say the motorist is hurt to such an extent that he was his motor his bike got damaged, he was injured severely. Now the driver of the car is came to know about this fact that the bike that the motorist is riding is the stolen one, or that the bike is without the motorist is without license, or the vehicle is not registered, or any such kind of fact that can be there. So when while proving these cases, if something like this comes before the court of law, then court of law will not take this defense into consideration. Then the plaintiff cannot be entitled to any compensation. Plaintiff cannot claim that I am entitled because he himself is doing something wrong. So there you can say that we as there is a saying that whenever you approach the court, you should go with clean hands. So you shouldn't have done something wrong yourself. In that case, if you yourself have done something wrong, you cannot approach the court that I am right. You should be clear on your terms that yes, injury has been suffered because of the act of another person. So these are few examples that are there. Another aspect that is there under this aspect where plaintiff can be held liable is in the relationship of employer employee and workman and the employer. Now in labor cases also, when a workman is working on the premises, then if any injury is suffered during the course of employment or in the course of employment, then the employer is made liable as per law. But law in that case is also giving the liberty, or you can say an exception to this rule to employer to put this claim forward before the court of law that the injury or damages that are suffered by the workman is because of his or own negligence. There were proper guidelines that were provided, there were proper safeguards that were provided, but employee has not taken care into these particular safety regulations. So it may be argued that the workman claim for compensation should not be taken up, and he or she should be barred from claiming it because he was guilty of the breach of safety regulations. So what is it here again? There is the wrongful act that has been done by the plaintiff. So defendant cannot be held liable. So in law, we do have certain aspects where we do say that yes, a defendant is not liable provided it is proved that plaintiff has acted in such a manner where the wrong can be connected directly with the injury that is suffered by him or her. So the mere fact that plaintiff was wrong doer doesn't disentitle him from recovering damages from defendant for wrongful act. There must be some negligence on part of plaintiff in order to claim the defense of plaintiff default by the defendant. So there is something which is to be proved beyond doubt that yes, plaintiff was a wrongdoer. There was some wrong that was done by plaintiff, and it is only because of the plaintiff's act that some injury or damage have been caused. Right. So what is it? It has been like Sir Diplock has given in Hardy versus motor insurance case, and while explaining the concept of excerpt cause a non-orator, court has said that when we are talking about enforcement of rights, we say that yes, court, the purpose, the function of court is to enforce these rights, even if they are not arising out of any contract. But we need to keep this in mind that when we are taking care of the rights, we are taking care of the rights of both the parties that are there, and it is to be looked into this fact that whether which party's rights are having more weightage than the other. So we have to keep this in mind that when we are talking about protection of right of a party, we are looking into certain facts. We have to see to this aspect that whether actually the plaintiff has committed a wrong or not, was under any has done any wrongful or illegal act or not, and then it is to be decided that whether a party is entitled to protection of rights or not. So we cannot just make say that plaintiff is a wrongdoer. We have to prove it that it is illegal, it is not as per the law. Right, plaintiff has not acted as per the law, and that is why the plaintiff has suffered injuries. Is it clear? So in such cases, defendant can take this defense of plaintiff the wrongdoer. Now there are few cases that are there, like Bird versus Holbrook is there, where the court has held defendant liable. Now this is a case where, after taking into consideration the fact, the court observed that putting a spring gun is something which is required beyond your required act. Trespassing is definitely a civil wrong, but when a person is trespassing your property, you can persecute that person, you can prosecute that person, you can file a claim of compensation against that person. But getting injury from spring gun is something which is beyond what is required to protect a property. Okay, you have all the right to protect your property, but the other party is also have certain rights. So here we have to see that the injury which is suffered by the plaintiff is more, or is the injury suffered by defendant is more. So it is to be taken into consideration that while deciding, we have to see this thing that if it would have been a case where there is no spring gun, right, and the person trespassed the property, right, then the defendant would have taken that the plaintiff is a wrongdoer, and the case of plaintiff would have become weak. But in the current case, the act of putting spring gun tap is beyond what is required to protect a property. Is it clear? So court, considering this thing, that this fact held defendant liable, right? So Sir Frederick Pollock also observed that when plaintiff himself is a wrongdoer, he is not disabled from recovering in tort. Right, here the being trespasser, plaintiff is a wrongdoer, but it doesn't mean plaintiff cannot make a claim. plaintiff can make a claim. Then in this case, what will happen? Court will look into this fact that whose injuries is at a higher degree than the other one. Which party has suffered more, and what act were required and what were not required. Okay, unless some unlawful act or conduct on his own part is connected with the harm suffered by him as the part of the same transaction, there should be some connection. So, what is to be seen under the defense? It has to be seen that what is the connection between the plaintiff's wrongful act and the harm suffered by him. Is it the harm that is suffered by the plaintiff because of its own wrongful act or not? Okay, so this is what will be taken into consideration in consideration. Like another example, if I would like to give here is, let's say there is a situation in which a bridge which is under the control of defendant, right? And it is while the defendant has put this particular aspect, or you can say the directions that there should not be any truck which is overloaded, right? And there are chances that bridge might get damaged, or some injuries are caused to the other party. Now here what happened, plaintiff uh, is passing through that bridge and the truck is overloaded. Now here what is it? Here the act is there. Now there is already a indication that is given, a kind of a sign is there that the bridge is not that strong and one should not go with overloaded truck. And despite this fact, plaintiff is flying on that particular bridge, which in a truck which is overloaded. So here defendant cannot be held liable. But let's say if the truck is not overloaded, right? And even after there is a warning notice, right? That is given by the defendant. But despite this fact that the truck is not overloaded, there are some injuries caused. So court will take into consideration that plaintiff has taken all due care, has taken the care of the warning notice that has been put by the defendant, right? So in this case, the second situation, defendant will be held liable. So one has to see that to what extent the injuries have been suffered, why it has been suffered, right? So if the plaintiff is the wrongdoer, his action will fail. And on other hand, if the defendant is wrongdoer, his wrongful act will in that case the defendant will fail, right? And then defendant will be liable for making the compensation. So these are certain things that need to be taken into consideration while deciding whether a particular in a particular case, whether it will be the defendant or whether it will be the plaintiff who should be held liable, after considering all the facts. Now this is the defense of plaintiff, the wrongdoer. Now third is when we talk about inevitable accident. Now here when we talk about inevitable inevitable accidents have been described as accidents which a person of ordinary prudence or intelligence cannot avoid, despite this fact that all reasonable care has been taken on his part under the circumstances in which the accident has occurred. So inevitable means that there is an accident that happened, that occurred, and when this accident happened, the person of ordinary intelligence or prudence acted in the same manner as others would have acted. So we normally say is that, like, you would have acted, I have acted in the same manner. That is what is meant with the statement that a man of ordinary prudence would have acted in the situation where others are placed. If I'm placed in the same situation, I would have acted in the similar way. So this is what is the main uh, uh, crux of inevitable accident, that when we are talking about inevitable accident, one has to see, one has to look into this fact whether the accident was within control, was outside the control of a person of an ordinary intelligence. Okay, so when we talk about an inevitable accident, we say that it does not mean absolutely inevitable. But what is to be taken into consideration? It is to be taken into consideration that whether unavoidability was there or not, whether you could have avoided the situation or not, right? So when we are saying whether you have taken precautions or not, whether you were under the situation where you would have avoided the situation, the collision or any kind of accident that happened. So what a person of ordinary intelligence is expected to take, you have taken all that due care. And despite that fact, despite that efforts, you met with an accident. So what it says that a man must be vigilant to guard against probable incidents and not against imaginary incidents. So anything that you can foresee that yes, I can avoid this, but I cannot avoid that. Okay, so accident means an unexpected injury. And if the same could not have been foreseen and avoided, in spite of all reasonable care on the part of the defendant, it is inevitable accident. Okay, so this is the reason when it is seen, it is looked into that whether there is inevitable accident or not. And then if it is proven that it is an inevitable accident, then it acts as a good defense for the defendant, where the defendant has to prove that there was neither intention to injure the plaintiff nor he or she could have avoided the injury to take place, and all reasonable care have been taken up by the defendant to avoid the accident. So it is unintentional. There is all reasonable care has been taken up, and still the act happened, still the accident happened. So what is it? It is an unavoidable accident which could not by any possibility would have been prevented from happening, right? Even if you have taken any ordinary care, caution, or employed your all the skills, but still the accident happened. So that is called inevitable accident.